Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Pesachim, Paragibel, Mishnah Aleph, Chapter 3, Mishnah 1. Okay, before we begin, a quick introduction. There are a couple of categories when it comes to chametz on Pesach. You know, chametz on Pesach, we may not own, we may not eat. But there are a couple of categories. There's one category called chametz be'en, straight chametz, unadulterated chametz. Chametz that nothing else permissible, that no non-chametz is mixed into. Okay, that no non-chametz is mixed into. Pure, unadulterated chametz. Then you have taruvas chametz. Then you have a situation where chametz is mixed together with permissible food. Now, when chametz is be'en, meaning when chametz is just unadulterated, you're not allowed to eat it. If you eat it, it's chi of kares, punishment of kares. When we're talking about teruvas chametz, so then we say like this. Now, teruvas chametz, I don't think you get kares for, but teruvas chametz is definitely going to be usher. You're definitely going to get you can definitely get lashes for teruvas chametz if in this mixture you have a ratio of 1 kazayas of chametz per achilas pras. That means like this. That means that if I eat this from this mixture, if I eat the amount of 3 eggs, okay, the amount of 3 eggs worth of food, and within that amount of 3 eggs of food, there's 1 kazayas of chametz in it, that is called taruvas chametz. That's a mixture of chametz, and that's like regular chametz. I don't think you get punishment of kares for it, but you're not allowed to eat it, not allowed to keep it. But then there is a point of a mixture of chametz when you have less than a kazayas per 3 eggs of food. Okay, you have less than a kazayas. When you have less than a kazayas, that's already a different story about what exactly the prohibition there is. I believe it's going to be a rabbinic prohibition, but it's not going to be a Torah prohibition. And then you have something called chametz nuksha. Chametz nuksha is chametz that is pretty much inedible. If you force yourself, you could eat it, but it's not typically eaten. That's called chametz nuksha. So the 2 categories that our Mishna is going to talk about is, first, is going to talk about a case of taruvas chametz, when chametz is mixed together with permissible food, and there's less than a kazayas, less than the volume of an olive of chametz per 3 eggs of this volume of the food. That's one category we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about the category of chametz nuksha. And these categories that Abish is going to talk about are in regard to whether you have to get rid of them, whether you have to search them and get rid of them from your domain, as to whether you have to do that or not. The Mishna is like this. Elu oivrim b'Pesach. These are the things that have to be removed on Pesach. But as the Bartunera says, these things we're about to mention are a rabbinic obligation to remove. According to Torah law, there would not be a problem of possessing these things. But there's a rabbinic obligation to remove them. Kutach habavli, Babylonian kutach. Listen to this. Succotash. What's that? A dip. A kutach is a dip made from sour milk and somewhat moldy breadcrumbs. Something, there are days that nothing went to waste. Okay, it was used as a dip to dip food into. Now the problem is that there's breadcrumbs, right? So it's chametz. Now it's interesting. We're considering this moldy breadcrumbs edible, and this is a mixture of chametz, but there's less than a volume of an olive of chametz to the bottom of 3 eggs of this food. Now, the Sheikh Ramadi, Median beer. What's that? Beer produced in the times of the Mishnah was commonly made from dates and therefore was not chametz. The beer from Medea, however, was made from barley and was chametz, hops. Okay, so that's Sheikh Ramadi. Is there chametz here? Yep, but it's the ratio that we just said before. Less than a kazayas per the volume of 3 eggs of this food. V'chometz adomi. Chometz adomi means is a vinegar from Edom, Edomite vinegar. This vinegar was made with barley. So again, we have chometz there. That's okay. That's the first cases, right? We have the kutach, the shechar, the chometz. 3 cases. I'm sorry. These are all 3 cases of where we have a mixture of chometz, but the mixture is such that midaraisa there'd be no problem owning this, but the Rabbanan said you have to get rid of it. That's the first cases. The next cases are all going to be cases of what we call chometz nuksha, the chometz that is pretty much inedible. The first example is Zaysaim HaMitzri. I'm sorry. Zaysaim HaMitzri belonged to the case before. Zaysaim HaMitzri belonged to the category before of the mixture of chometz. Egyptian zisam is a drink made from barley, saffron, and salt. It's pretty heavy. Okay. But that is also an example of a mixture of chometz. Okay, next. Zaymin shal tzaboyim. They translate that as the bran water used by dyers. Water in which wheat or barley bran was soaked and used in producing certain red dyes. Okay, although you've got barley here, but in this state that you make it, it's pretty much inedible. Mm-hmm. That was Zaymin shal tzaboyim. But amilon shal tabochem. Amilon used by cooks means like this. It was a kind of bread or a dough made from young, unripe grain, which they say grain that has not yet reached 1/3 of its ripeness. So they make a bread out of it, which a cook would place over the mouth of a pot to absorb the froth and bad smell. Isn't that interesting? You bake this bread.
And industrial rather than...
Correct. You bake this bread, you put it on top of the pot of food, and it's meant to absorb the froth, whatever that means exactly. I think in another place they called it muck. I don't know what they called it exactly, but it's not pleasant, and a bad smell. So again, this is made in a way, it's made from unripe grain. So it's really not edible. The koilin shel seifrim, they describe it as a scribe's glue, a paste-like glue made from the flour dust of millstones used by scribes to bind together their paper scrolls. So it's been a glue. Is it edible?
No.
If you really pushed it down, it would be, but it's typically not. Okay.
Neat paste.
Right. Now, so all of these are examples of things that the Bartanura explains are, although minatara, according to Torah law, you would not transgress the prohibition of bal yira, bal yamatzah, of owning chametz. Nonetheless, the Rabbanan said you gotta get rid of it. Rebbe Eliezer Omer. Rebbe Eliezer says that what we just said includes aftach shitei nashim, which is described as a woman's cosmetics, but it's not really cosmetics. It was actually made to remove hair, and this was also made with chametz, but this was a case of chametz nuksha. Okay, it was the chametz that was there was inedible, but it wasn't straight chametz nuksha. It was mixed with other things. See, in the case before, in the first half of the Mishnah, the Tana Kama's statement in the Mishnah, we had 3 examples of a mixture of chametz, and then 3 examples of chametz nuksha. The first 3 examples were chametz mixed with permissible food. The next example of chametz nuksha, there was nothing mixed with it. It was straight, unadulterated chametz nuksha. There, the Tana Kama said, you got to remove it. Rebbe Eliezer added, even chametz nuksha mixed together with permissible food, you also have to get rid of. Zah, klal, this is the rule, says Rebbe Eliezer. Kol shemim dagan, anything that's from a type of grain, the 5 grains mentioned before, Reizah Rebbe Pesach, you will be transgressing, owning them on Pesach if you have them. Chametz nuksha, does it have chametz from a grain, from the 5 grains? Yes, it does. So even though it's mixed together with permissible food, nonetheless, Rebbe Eliezer says, you're over Pesach. You transgress the prohibition of owning chametz on Pesach. Now, I don't know. So again, the commentaries point out that Rebbe Eliezer is adding on to the Tana Kama. Tana Kama only spoke about straight chametz nuksha. Rebbe Eliezer says even chametz nuksha mixed together with permissible food, you cannot keep it on Pesach. Now, the reading of the Mishnah is Hareza Oiver Pesach. You transgress on Pesach. That is how they translate it here. Now, I don't know if this transgression, according to Rebbe Lezer, is a Torah transgression or it's rabbinic transgression. But the question I'm throwing out there. I'm not sure what that word Hareza Oiver Pesach. I mean, the wording of the beginning of the Mishnah was Elu Oivrim. These pass, which means these have to be removed. Here, Hareza Oiver typically means you transgress. It could mean a rabbinic prohibition. But practically speaking, at the end, Rebbe Lezer was adding that even a chametz nuksha b'taruvus in a mixture has to be removed, and the halach is not like Rebbe Lezer. Then the Mishnah concludes, Hare elu ba'azhara ve'ema mishum kares. All things that we just mentioned now regarding eating, now we're talking about eating. They are all forbidden, meaning they have a biblical prohibition. Ve'ema mishum kares, but there's no penalty of kares for eating them. The prohibition of eating this kind of chametz, like I said, the prohibition to eat chametz in a mixture or chametz that is not really fit to eat, comes from a different verse called Machmetzes lo yiseichelu. That is a pasuk that says don't eat it. There's no mentioning of kares there, which means whatever falls into this category is going to be have a lav. It's going to be a prohibition. You would get lashes for it, but you would not get kares as you would for eating chametz be'en, straight chametz. Now they bring down here, in the case of a mixture of chametz and other items, he could receive lashes only if he had enough of the mixture to have eaten a kazayas of the chametz itself, and he did so within a short amount of time. Bottom line is that you have to, if you're gonna get any kind of lashes for eating chametz, you got to eat a kazayas of it. You got to eat a kazayas, and the kazayas has to be eaten within the amount of time that it takes to eat the volume of 3 eggs, which could be anywhere between they range between 2 and 9 minutes, depending on the opinion you follow. But that's regarding eating. You eat a kazayas within this time, then you have the prohibition. Okay, and the same thing, it seems chametz nuksha is the same idea. If you eat it and you eat a kazayas of it, you would get lashes for it. The discussion before that we had about the chametz, a volume of chametz within that's in the mixture, that would be a ratio of 1 volume of chametz to 3 eggs worth of the food that's mixed into. The discussion there is regarding, what do you have to do regarding, is there a prohibition to own it or not? Is it an obligation to remove rabbinically or not? So our discussion before in the Tanakama was discussing about having to remove the chametz, and that is where we need this kazayas of chametz, that you have a kazayas of chametz per 3 volumes of egg of the food. If within 3 volumes of egg of the food you have a kazayas of chametz, then already you're going to have that now already be a Torah prohibition of owning. Less than that would be a rabbinic prohibition of owning. But if you eat a kazayas of chametz within the amount of time of eating the volume of 3 eggs, then that would be at least the punishment. That would be a prohibition. It would carry the punishment of malchus of lashes. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.